More thoughts on the anniversary of 9/11, and we're going to talk about Syria a little bit in relation to that. That's coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, how you doing? It's probably 10 o'clock at night already. We've been going almost since sunup this morning. Still working on my mom's house here, and it's really coming together. I'm really excited to have it in such good shape for her so that she can rent this thing out, and because this is important for her income. So we want to make sure that we take good care of it and help her out as much as we can. And it's been a real joy to be here with two of my kids working together on this week. But it hasn't left me a lot of time for the podcast, and so here I am at 10 o'clock at night trying to get this thing done. And it's nice to finally sit down. If I fall asleep in the middle of the podcast, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to deal with it because I am smoked. I wanted to talk some more about September 11th because I'm recording this on September 11th. You're going to watch it September 12th. But right behind me over there is an elementary school. And I was sitting out here this morning and listening to them over the loudspeaker do the Pledge of Allegiance. And then I listened to the principal, I suppose, talk to the kids over the loudspeaker about September 11th and what 9/11 means to our country, what happened on that day. It made me realize that there's not a single kid at that school who was alive anywhere near September 11th. And so to them, it has about the same import as D-Day has to us. And that's kind of strange. And I can imagine now why my grandmother used to talk about what it was like on D-Day and say, we have to always remember, we can never forget the sacrifices that those men and women gave to free us from that potential tyranny of the axis of evil, the Axis powers from World War II. A lot of troops have fought and died for our country, and a lot of them these days kind of struggle, I think, with the thought of, is it worth it what we did over there? Because, I don't hear that much from guys that are in the war zone, but it seems like when they get back and with the space of some years and they see that, like let's say you were a Marine that was in Helmand Province back in 2006 or 2007. And here it is, 2019, 12 years later, and your kids are entering middle school, the kids you had when you got back from deployment. And you're looking at this and going, what are we still doing over there? Is it even worth all the blood and sacrifice that we made over there 12 years ago? I mean, holy smokes. And I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. I think that it is worth it because, A, it's the principle of the thing. We have to let evil people around the world understand that if you mess with us, you're going to get hurt. And we will spend whatever it takes, however long it takes, to get the job done, to fix that problem. And so in the principle of the thing, the no better friend, no worse enemy principle, I think it is worth it that we went over there. And if another 9/11 happens, we should be willing to take out whoever perpetrated it. And that leads to another question, let me just finish. The second thing is that we are improving the lives of the people in the parts of the world where we send our troops. I mean, we're killing off the bad people, and we're maybe destroying a lot of things in the process. So that's got to get rebuilt. But when it does get rebuilt, it'll get rebuilt better. Most likely we're going to pay for it to be rebuilt anyway. And by virtue of our example, our troops being in the field over there, the people in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, they see what we look like. They see what we live like. They see how we dress. They see how we treat each other. And they realize that there's a different way from what they've known all their lives. I mean, you got to understand, many of these people live a very barbarous life. I mean, they follow the back end of a goat around their entire life. They don't have internet. They don't have movies and television and all that kind of stuff. And so they don't really know. I mean, think about this. You go to some place like Helmand Province, which is just, it's like where God stores extra dirt till he needs it somewhere else. And the only thing green is grown around the rivers because of a USAID project in the 1940s that we paid for, that put in irrigation canals all over that place, and now it makes Helmand Province the #1 exporter of opium in the world. So that didn't work out too well. But everywhere else in Helmand Province is literally just a dust bowl. It's just flat and desert and hot as all blazes. It's not a place you'd want to live. It's not a place if somebody came in and said, we're going to take your land from you, we'd say, go ahead, you can have it. I'll go somewhere else. But when American troops show up and actually do something and spend years there training and living amongst these people, they start to realize, oh, there is a better way. There is a better way of life. And I want that for myself. It's not that people aren't basically the same everywhere. They are. People basically want to just live a good life. They want to live the best life they can. But many of them don't have any path to that, and they don't. Their ideology keeps them in bondage, really. And so they've lived that way for thousands of years. So now they know better, and many of them want better. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in Afghanistan as we have less and less influence there, as we stop spending so much money there. That'll be very interesting to see. But, so was 9/11, 9/11 was life-changing for a lot of people. Was our response to it worth it? We had to respond to it. We didn't have a choice. That wasn't our choice. When you're attacked like that, you have to do something about it. Now, could we have done it different? Sure. I've said for a long time, I think that we should probably have just gone in the space of a couple of months, wiped out the Taliban who were in power, and helped the Afghans maybe get to their first presidential election, let's say. Be there a year. And they have their first presidential election. They elect Hamid Karzai as their president, and we say, all right, there you go. Now you've got a democratically elected president in your country, and we're here to offer advice anytime you want, but we're not going to send any money, and our troops are leaving. And you guys can remake your country any way you want, but if you become a threat to us in any way, shape, or form, just so you know, we will reboot your country again. We'll do to you what we did to the Taliban. And otherwise, have a nice day. That would have been the easiest, cheapest, and probably smartest thing for us to do, because like those canals in Helmand Province, we never know the second and third order effects of our actions in the war zone or anywhere, foreign policy for that matter. So we should be careful about to whom we give weapons, for example. We should be careful about where we send our troops, because most likely they'll end up being there for 50 years. Hello, South Korea. Or 70 years. Hello, Germany. I think that so often many of the decisions that are made in war really come down to political decisions about the next election. We're seeing that now. I mean, Trump is talking about taking the troops out of Afghanistan and would have been happy to do it had it not got to the point where he had to say, no, we're going to keep them there just to save face because the Taliban keep blowing things up. How can we talk to people that keep doing that? But we need to have people, as I've said before, in Afghanistan right now, and the people that are there have plenty to do. It's not like they're just sitting around guarding a concrete block or something. I mean, they're at work. There's not very many of them there, and so they have a lot to do. But we need to be there just to keep an eye on Iran. Okay. So it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other in a way. We either spend the money, we keep a huge presence there, and run the risk of losing some of our soldiers, or we pull everybody out and run the risk that we create a vacuum by our absence, and Iran steps into that vacuum. Foreign policy is fraught with risk. That's just all there is to it. So I want to go back and show you some of the packages that we've made over the war on terror from Iraq, Afghanistan, different places. And I want you to ask yourself, would it have been better if we had just gone in and wiped out the current regime, taken out Saddam Hussein? Fine. Taken out the Taliban? Fine. And leave before we establish a permanent presence? Would that have given rise to ISIS that much sooner? Perhaps. Would that have caused the Syrian civil war that much sooner? Maybe it would have. I don't know. What I do know is that you don't defeat an idea with force of arms. I mean, there's no military answer to defeat an ideology. You have to defeat an idea with a better idea. You defeat an ideology with a better ideology. Unfortunately, I'm absolutely certain that our government is not really willing to go that route. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, as you look at what we've been doing in Venezuela, for example, or with Venezuela, if you look at what we've been doing there, we didn't send in the military. What we're doing is we're trying to sow the seeds of something better by sending aid, by standing up for the Venezuelan people, supporting the Venezuelan people, by calling for an ouster of Nicolas Maduro, and then letting it play itself out. Believe me, there are plenty of Venezuelans are now the number one people group that are coming into the United States as immigrants now. They're not coming in illegally, as most of them, as we're seeing all these people coming in through the southern border. These are actually asylum requests, legally made asylum requests in the United States. Venezuelans form the biggest group of people right now. It's an absolute travesty. And you're going to hear more and more about Venezuela, I believe, in the coming days. I'm hoping to get back down there and do something about it. But anyway, let me show you a couple of clips, just short ones. And then I want you to think about, on the tail end of those, would it have been better if we had just wiped out their government, let them put a new one in, and then stood back? Check this out.
This is a glimpse of Afghanistan of the future. It's been a kinetic war for the U.S. and NATO forces, and now it's being turned over to the Afghans. This unit right here is an Afghan Special Forces unit, accompanied by U.S. Special Forces. And we're about to go to an Afghan local police checkpoint that was hit just a few hours ago with enemy fire.
This is the one that actually got attacked earlier this morning. We're just going to go in here and find out exactly what happened.
Afghan fire being fired at Afghan police. They're the new target for the Taliban because they're interrupting what the Taliban would otherwise be doing in little towns just like this.
This is one of our secure villages, so what we're doing is we're just getting out and just talking to the people, seeing what they have to say, because again, we're here for the people.
But this is an all-Afghan operation. If we're going to win this war, this is the way it's going to happen. The Afghans protecting fellow Afghans from the Taliban and from foreign enemies. Here in Afghanistan, the announcement of troop withdrawals is prompting some to ask for a definition of victory. Canadian Major General D. Michael Day, Deputy Commander Army for the NATO training mission, had a ready answer.
I mean, I often look forward to somebody asking me what the definition of victory is, because I don't think I'm the right guy to answer that. And the reason I say that, you don't want a general officer defining victory. You want somebody to give him that definition, and then you want me to execute that. Been in a lot of countries, been in a lot of places where the military actually defines their role themselves. None of those places are my second honeymoon spot. So it's fairly simple for a military guy in that regard. We give our best advice, we tell them what's in the art of the possible, and then we receive our orders and we march on.
Okay, so like I say, you don't here. Those pieces are from several years ago, at least five to 7 years ago, and nothing much has changed except for we have a lot fewer troops in Afghanistan now. We have a lot fewer troops in Iraq as well. But Syria is still a huge mess. Iraq is still a huge mess. Mostly because we pulled out precipitously. We just said, boom, declare the war finished. But it wasn't finished because the enemy was still fighting. And then Al-Qaeda morphed into ISIS. And now ISIS exists in something like 40 countries around the world. So that's bad. Look, I don't think this war is ever going to really be over, because what we're fighting is not even this radical ideology of Islam. The radical ideology, the radical side of Islam. We're not fighting radical Islam. We're fighting barbarism. We're fighting savagery. And unfortunately, as long as there are sinful men on this earth, there will always be savages. And so there will always be a need for good men and women who are willing to say, I will be the warrior. I will stand up and be God's agent of wrath against the evildoer. Send me. Here am I, send me. There'll always be a need for people like that. And I think we can all learn from those people. Not only should we honor those people, especially on a day like Patriots' Day, but we should try to learn from those people. The selfless sacrifice, the willingness to lay aside their own desires to provide for the needs of others, and many other positive traits. Not every man can be a warrior. I get that. We've got accountants and clerks and clerics and farmers, and not every man can, go off to war. But every man can learn from the warrior. And there are a lot of good things to learn. So that's it for today's podcast. Thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton, and this has been The Hot Zone.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.